Hi, welcome to Podpadstudios. It's freezing out here.
I don't know why you wanted to film out here, Master
You've got a
Maker.
cup of tea and I haven't got one.
Well, I got planning.
So we're standing here in our, what should we call it?
It's the Arctic zone.
It's our Arctic zone. So there's a hole over Swindon in the atmosphere, and it only snows in this patch. If you notice, there's a bit of snow on the spinner, but there's no snow anywhere else. It's just here. Just in this spot.
If you want to come on a skiing holiday, come up and see Podpadstudios.
Podpadstudios, right? We've got a fair bit here. We could do a little ski slope. Be really good.
We're supposed to be telling them what's going on. We've been
a bit snowing.
Busy because I have been working with Swindon Open Studios. A lot more on that later. So exciting things going on there for this year's Open Studios, which will be at the last two weekends of September.
It's like Chicken Run.
You're so romantic. And somebody else has been working on a fire engine. So please just don't mention
fluid dynamics.
Fluid dynamics and Bernoulli's law.
Bernoulli's law? It's not Bernoulli's law. Daniel Bernoulli. And Newton. It's not baloney.
And Newton.
Might be a baloney. I'm probably talking a load of baloney.
All these old geezers have been hanging about the workshop talking about laws and fluid dynamics. So I guess there's going to be a bit of that in this episode, is there?
Yeah, I'm going to go and do some skiing anyway. Hi and welcome back to Podpadstudios on this freezing cold morning. I'm out here in the workshop. I've got all the heaters on and it's still cold. I think it's about like -4 outside. Anyway, you're probably wondering what all this is. So am I. I've come to a conclusion, and it's a very, very important conclusion. It's taken me a while to come to this conclusion, but I have reached this conclusion. And the conclusion is that I am not going to become a scientist who deals with flow dynamics. And that is because I don't understand half of it. It's really exciting, it's really interesting, and I get a bit of it, but most of it, I don't. Anyway, you're probably asking, why do I need to understand this stuff? Why do I need to understand about flow dynamics and all this? Well, I've got a problem, and that problem is back to the fire engine. Now, if you've been following the build over the last several months, you know that the lower nozzles on the fire engine squirt water, and they squirt water really, really well. You know, the head pressure on the actual nozzles is excellent. You know, the water comes out great. The velocity of the water is good. Notice I'm using some technical terms now. The pressure is good. Everything is fine. It's working really, really well. But the top nozzle, I want it to squirt foam. I want foam to come out of it. And I want it to look good. I want it to look like a scale version of the real thing, not this little trickle of water coming out or a big splurge of foam. It looks like a giant bubble bath. And this is my problem. This is the crux of my problem. And this is why fluid dynamics has got involved. And I'll tell you why it's got involved. It's got involved because my original solution is just get loads of tubes. Try lots of different tubes, thin tubes, fat tubes, tubes made from different things, put them together in different ways and see if I can speed up the flow of the water and add foam to it and just try it out, see if it works, and it doesn't. And that's what really got me thinking. There must be some mathematical or scientific reasoning behind all this. And that's what got me into looking at, you know, flow dynamics. Bernoulli's principle, Newton's law of whatever it was, second law I think it is, and lots of other different rules that apply to the way fluids flow through tubes. So here's my problem. Here is my problem. The crux of my problem is this. I want to mix concentrate foam fluid with a water stream to produce foam, and I want to spray that foam out of the front of the fire engine at a distance of about 5 to 6 meters from the front of the fire engine. Bear in mind the fire engine is about 2 meters long, so scale proportion, that is about right for the scale and the size of the actual, you know, the fire engine. That's my thing. That's what I want to do. What I have got to now, I've got to a point now where using one of these, which I've explained in a previous video, which is a Venturi, the principle behind this is very, very simple. The water flow is pumped through here. and basically comes out of there. So you have a water stream going through here. But because this tube narrows in the centre, due to, you know, again, lots of science, Bernoulli's principle and all the others, a vacuum is formed, and a vacuum then pulls up from here. We were to connect a tube to that. A vacuum sucks up liquid into the water stream. The liquid it's sucking up is foam concentrate. What that means is the foam concentrate is mixing in the Venturi system here. The pump is just pumping fresh water through. Pump is not contaminated with foam. Great, not a problem. In fact, the mix that I get out of the end is perfect. And I know it's perfect, not because it looks good when it sprays out, because it doesn't, and that's my problem. I know it's the right mix because when I come to clean up on the, you know, the patio or the workshop base after I've sprayed it and I brush the brush on it, it all froths up into foam. So that means the mix that I'm getting, the concentrate of mix, is about right. And I can adjust the amount of concentrate that goes through with valves and stuff like that. So that bit, I've got it right. I've got it right. And I don't know how I've got it right, but I've got it right. What the problem is that the foam spraying out doesn't look like foam. And that's my problem. So this is what's got me thinking. I'm missing something. I've got to be missing something in the equation of the way that this all mixes. Now, I've played around with lots of things. I've played around with increasing the pressure. So if you increase the pressure, it kind of effectively increases the flow rate. The flow rate is the speed at which, you know, it's the flow of water going through this. And by narrowing the tubes, you know, by moving it from a fat tube to a narrow tube, the velocity of the liquid increases. But, and here is the but, the pressure, if the velocity increases, so going from a big tube here, so this is a bit kind of confusing really when you think about it, but it's true. If you go from a fat tube and you've got liquid flowing through a fat tube, you've got pressure here, so high pressure here, okay? Because it's pushing the liquid through the tube. If we go to a small tube, the velocity of the liquid increases. But you would think, okay, yeah, that's great. I've got now real high pressure at the end. But you don't. You have low pressure at the end. You've got high pressure here and you've got low pressure here. As the liquid speeds up through a narrower tube, the pressure decreases. It doesn't increase, it decreases. And I was getting confused about all this, thinking, well, if the pressure decreases, then everything kind of slows down. But it doesn't work like that, because then I've looked at the way the firefighting nozzles work. And a lot of the real firefighters, they like low pressure at the nozzle, not high pressure at the nozzle. And I'm thinking, well, why? Surely high pressure is more power, it's more force, it's more... But it isn't. It isn't. And this is where it all gets really, really confusing. One thing I think that I'm missing, and I've tested this and it's quite interesting, is air. Now, if you think about it, if you were mixing some yogurt or you were pouring water into a bowl, a good example, actually, a really good example, washing up liquid in a bowl and fill it with water. It looks all right, but put your hand in it and swizz it all around or get a whisk and whisk it all up and it makes loads of frothy bubbles. So what are you adding? You're adding air. And I think that's what I'm missing. How do I get air into the mix? Well, I actually thought, I did try an experiment, which was hilarious. I used my normal Venturi to pull up, you know, my normal vacuum to pull up the foam into the water stream. And then I used a second one, basically like this, joined pretty much, not like that, but, you know, with proper joins and everything. I got my phone coming up, I've now got my phone mix coming through into this chamber here, and I then injected air into this chamber here, through here. And it created quite a frothy mix. So the air actually did make quite a frothy mix, but it was kind of too aerated. It was too much air. And I got this snow kind of effect rather than foam. Then I decreased the air and then nothing happened. So there's obviously a very, very fine point at which the mixture, it creates foam. But how do I do that? How do I create that on an effectively 1/6 scale working with this kind of stuff? This is basically pressure valves and welding ends, and it's what I've got. And I can use machining, and I can machine some of this to change little bits of it, but only within to a certain degree. So therein lies my problem. How do I create the foam? This is what I'm experimenting with. I'm wondering also whether my foam concentrate isn't that concentrated. I'm not using the ARFF mix anymore now because everybody tells me I shouldn't really use it because it's environmentally unfriendly. So I'm not going to use that anymore. I am using snow foam, car snow foams, which because they do work really, really well. This one isn't great. It's very, very cheap. I think 5 litres with it was about a £5 or something. Doesn't even froth it when you put it on the car. So that's kind of maybe part of my problem. I need a more stronger concentrate of foam. So this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at with my foam dilemma. How do I create a stream of foam that looks right? And I'm fairly convinced it's the injection of air into the system. But it's how do I do that? Do I create... So what I have experimented with is these kind of nozzles here. Don't know if I can take that one off. So this kind of nozzle here. And I've basically, it's that way around, drilled a hole in here and introduced a mesh into the nozzle. And the mesh introduced into the nozzle then obviously agitates the liquid as it passes through the mesh. And I do get better results, but I get a significant drop in the flow. Now you might think, well, okay, increase the flow rate. You know, if the flow drops off and you put something in the way, which does make sense if you think about it, increase the flow rate. I can't increase the flow rate because if I increase the flow rate, my 10-litre tank of fluid is depleted within seconds. So yes, I may get a foam effect, but I need a water container that's 8-9 times the size of the water container I've got if I want to increase the pressure and the flow rate. And the velocity of the fluid coming out of the nozzle as water from the fire engine is firing almost 8 metres. So I've got an 8-metre stream of liquid coming out of here. But of course, the minute you introduce the foam, because the foam, I'm guessing, has a compressible nature to it. Oh my God, I sound like a scientist. Has a compressible nature to it. If you start applying things like Bernoulli's principle, then it all kind of doesn't work properly because then the flow rates change and the velocities change and the pressure rates change. Yeah. It is confusing. You know, and I think the more I play around with it, it is kind of exciting because, you know, you're learning new things. But at the same time, I kind of want it to work. I'm probably going to be really disappointed when it actually works. I'm going to have a eureka moment, aren't I? Where suddenly I've played around with all this, turn the engine on, press the button, and I get this perfect stream of foam coming out. And it's going to be like, what do I do now? So at least it gives me something to do on this wonderful winter's day. Anyway, I'm going to get on with this. And any suggestions, any ideas, comments below, please, as usual. And see if I can solve this problem, because there must be a way to do this. There must be a way to solve this problem at this scale without building what effectively is a fire eductor system, which you would have on the real thing. I'm going to do some tests actually with some of these on higher water pressure systems. So I'm going to connect them up to a hose running a bar of pressure, 10 psi of pressure, and see what different effects I get with if I do increase the pressure, off the fire engine, so I can test it off it. Because it might be that actually I simply can't do it because there isn't enough velocity, there isn't enough flow of fluid to create enough pressure to basically agitate the foam to create a foam mix and fire it 5 meters. Yes, I can make foam. I've already proven that by adding the air. It creates a foam, but it just kind of trickles out of the nozzle and it goes 0.5 meter in front. That's not what I want. So it might be that this actually is not possible. But we will see. We will see.
We're no longer talking about the event. We're talking about the run-up and the community around the event. The rest of the about,
I think just avoid that saying anything too prescriptive in the aim.
Something like this.